All right, everyone, welcome into the first episode of 2025 of Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports. It's episode 163. I'm Nick Hill, coming to you live from a snow-prepped Chattanooga, Tennessee, United States, because it's not white outside right now, but it's going to be white in about 12 hours from now. No loaves of bread left on the shelves. Everyone is losing their minds. And joining me from hopefully a much more tranquil Americana Sao Paulo, Brazil, is Gus Tomazeli. Gus, I hope people aren't panic buying at the stores there.
Not at all, because here it's currently 71 degrees and tomorrow is going to be high of 85, 87 and a low of 64. So another humid and hot day here in Americana, where also my dear friend Gustavo Barbudo is watching, the best Rio Branco insider. He covers really well Rio Branco. Shout out to him. But Americana is definitely calm, and I want to say happy 2025 to all. That's true. We made it another year, so we're getting to year four. It's no
Absolutely.
like
Yeah, because we started.
2021, 2022, 2023, 20, like year five. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely insane. Like everything that we have covered since the beginning of this podcast. And we're at another year in 2025. And as we've done in every year, I always like to ask this question at the top of the first episode. What are some things you're looking forward to in this year of 2025 sports wise?
I'm definitely looking forward to the FIFA Club World Cup in 2025 and see how the Brazilian teams do. Definitely Rio Branco in set in A3 of the Paulista State Championship, and um, I would say Libertadores is always interesting, but I think the FIFA Club World Cup in United States of America, that would be, I think, the biggest sports event, at least for me, in this year.
Yeah, to me, this is a bit of a transition year, right? Like we're right before the main World Cup next year, which is obviously going to be a massive deal. But to me, I'm looking more microscope, right? Like there's a new TV contract in NASCAR. I'm interested to see how that affects the sport there and obviously how teams are able to financially operate. I'm also interested to see how college athletics progresses throughout this year because it feels like we're in a bit of a weird spot right now in college athletics where it's a bit of a wild west. Is that going to change throughout this year? Is the college football playoff going to change in terms of the structure? Is there going to be more conference realignment? That is all up in the air. So while there isn't last year we had the Olympics and all these other various things. To me, this year is more like, all right, what happens now? Because last year was the beginning of the 12-team college football playoff. And now, all right, now we're firmly in this era. What happens next?
Yeah, that's true. That's definitely, I think, college athletics in United States of America, that will be, I think, the biggest question mark in sports in the world, I'll say, because there's so much uncertainty. There's so much, it feels like now we are in a wild west situation. It feels like right now it's kind of like when, for example, the MLB, there was the start of the free agency, or even here in Brazil when we had the we call lei do passe, where like the soccer teams here in Brazil pretty much own the players. They couldn't have free agency or like player mobility. Like teams decided where players are gonna go, even where when their contract were expired. And then this Pili law was approved, and then everything changed in Brazilian soccer. And now agents have way more leverage and power than soccer teams since the beginning of the 21st century. So probably I think there's going to be kind of shifting towards this direction in college athletics, especially in college football.
Absolutely. And does AI get more and more involved in sports too? That is a question that I think will come up throughout the year as well. But I definitely think it's a setup year for what we're going to see in 2026. But there's so much that we've got on the plate here to start off 2025 and what I'm sure is going to be another insane year of sports across America and Brazil. And we're starting off right in the middle of a playoff game here. One of those 12-team playoffs. I know we kind of associated that with 2024, but really, what's still going on? We have the Orange Bowl in Miami between Notre Dame and Penn State right now. Penn State leads 10-3 at halftime, a low scoring defensive game. Not too surprised by that. Kind of what are your thoughts on what you've gotten to see of that game?
I think it has been a lot defensive kind of battle. It's a lot on the trenches. Uh, Definitely not a good night for Riley Leonard. Kind of scrambling. He almost had a fumble. So I think Marcus Freeman is gonna have to figure out at halftime how can he make his offense productive, because as of right now, Penn State is shutting out.
Yeah, and you look back to last week's game, and we didn't really get a chance to look at Notre Dame's last one before this game, and what was just an insane situation down in New Orleans last week. And first and foremost, just want to, and there's been a lot of tragedy over the last week in America between what happened in New Orleans last week with the attacks. We're going to have to get to the LA wildfires that are ongoing right now and how it's affecting the Vikings-Rams playoff game. Moving that game to Arizona, just my thoughts and prayers and condolences to everyone being affected from the terrorist attacks, wildfires. Just a rough start, unfortunately, in the United States in terms of events. But they did ultimately play that Sugar Bowl last week, and Notre Dame did win. What was their biggest win since the late 80s? I mean, that win was program defining. It was the win I've been waiting on Notre Dame to get before I took them seriously as a championship contending program. Because being an independent, being outside of a conference, I'm just sitting here wondering, can Notre Dame truly win anything of significance? And defeating Georgia in the way they were able to do it, dominating them up front, controlling that game, and obviously they took advantage of a mistake by Georgia right before halftime on the sack fumble, and of course getting the kick return to start the second half. And for Notre Dame, they didn't really move the ball up and down the field on Georgia. It was defense and special teams that won in that game. And for Notre Dame here against Penn State, it's probably going to have to look very similar because they're not getting any. I mean, they can't throw the ball down the field.
Yeah, I think Marcus Freeman was able to build a strong defense that has been somewhat electric and even decisive in this playoffs. And I'll go back even against Indiana. There were signs that the defense was going to be the main piece of this Notre Dame team. I mean, Penn State can't, can't figure out, still how to, of course, at the end of the second quarter, they were able to score a touchdown, but,
Yeah, it was a very nice 6-minute drive, too. So, and I think that's ultimately going to be the difference here because I think, when you look at the running backs, Penn State just has a better stable versus Notre Dame's Jeremiah Love. And ultimately, Drew Allar, even though I'm not a fan of either quarterback in this matchup, I think Allar is better than Leonard. And ultimately, Allar is just going to, I think he's going to make a couple of more plays in this one to get it done in the second half. But I'm very curious. And also, we must note, though, the Riley Leonard did get hurt in the second quarter. So Notre Dame is on their backup quarterback, which is really not the position you want to be in down a touchdown against a really, really good defense. And if that's the case, I mean, Penn State's a half away from the national championship game.
Which will be massive, massive for James Franklin because he is going to win back-to-back playoff games. For a coach, what?
But then let's think about the narratives, though, here for Penn State, right? You get SMU at home, a team that you're massively out-talented, okay? Then you go to the Fiesta Bowl, play a Boise State team that, once again, you massively out-talent outside of Ashton Genty. And then you're going to potentially get to beat Notre Dame here, or maybe a backup quarterback all in the second half. I mean, you say you get to the national title, let's say Ohio State blows you out. Then are we supposed to be that impressed with James Franklin in this postseason?
That's fair. I mean, if Penn State would have been blown out, like for example TCU was against Georgia, then you can you can say that was kind of not as impressive run. But if the games go like to the nail biter, to the fourth quarter, or to the overtime, do we really want to say that Penn State failed? I mean, I think making to the national championship has some importance. I think James Franklin should be praised for his postseason performance. You can say, oh, but they play SMU, Boise State, and Notre Dame. They faced a team they had to face. They didn't choose their path. They just, you know, they were benefited from a flawed system.
Absolutely. And yeah, there's been reports over the last week that there's going to be talk of changing this flawed seating system next season, which clearly it should be, because what happened to Oregon, for example, should not have happened. They shouldn't have had to play Ohio State in the first round. And because of the automatic buys to the top four conference champions, it just completely threw the seating out of whack. But hey, Penn State, as you said, they took care of the business. They took care of who was placed in front of them. And if they take care of the second half, they're going to make it to the promised land of the national championship. And hey, you got to give them credit. They really held Ashton Genty in check, made Boise State one-dimensional in the Fiesta Bowl. And they're looking to do the same thing to Notre Dame right now. Now, I do want to kind of circle back around to Georgia real quick, because to me, it was shocking to see Georgia get outclassed physically by Notre Dame. Like, it's one thing, like, I knew they would have a step down in quarterback play with Gunnar Stockton. But I don't think Gunnar Stockton lost in that game. They lost the game on the offensive line because they got pushed around. And they couldn't get anything going on offense. And to me, if I'm Kirby, that's worrisome, because for years and years and years, Georgia always had elite offensive lines. And it feels like, I think partially due to the transfer portal, they've lost depth there. And now they're in a position where they're not necessarily in a reloading phase anymore. And that could make Georgia average and prevent them from being an Alabama-type dynasty, in my opinion.
Yeah, what? Sorry, it broke up.
What I was saying is, I think because of the transfer portal and the inability to stack depth, I don't think you're going to see Georgia be an Alabama-style dynasty.
And we have to start questioning Kirby Smart's ability to recruit good quarterbacks, because, of course, he was able to win back-to-back with Stetson Bennett, which we can all say it's a good-ish quarterback. I mean, he did not even came close to make it to the NFL. He did not make anything impressive. And Carson Beck, again, was kind of on the same level. And now he's even considering not going to the NFL, going to the transfer portal. So my question is, can Georgia keep being on the top in an environment that looks like doesn't attract the most talented quarterbacks?
Well, I'll say this. I don't even think it's necessarily the quarterback that's the problem. It's skill positions. Where are the star receivers? I mean, Ohio State's receivers. I mean, would any of Georgia's receivers this year start in Ohio State? I don't think so. Like, I think Ohio State has 4 or 5 receivers better than anything Georgia has. Like, Georgia's receiving situation is no better than Tennessee's receiving situation. Their running back room is not better than Ohio State. It's not even better than Tennessee, in my opinion. What Georgia does really, really well is defense. And historically, they had really good lines. They had really good running backs. They didn't really have either one this year. Actually, I'll say this. I think Kirby actually did a good job coaching this year in terms of getting this team to an SEC championship. But what I will say is, clearly it has taken a step off, and it comes to recruiting. To me, the problem is partially, one, I don't think he made the right OC hire in Mike Bobo. I think that there's a reason why the 2 national titles he won were with Todd Monken, who's now with the Baltimore Ravens, because Todd Monken elevated that offense to something that fully utilized the talent that was on the roster. Mike Bobo is not doing that. To me, I would be looking for a new guy. But if you look at Kirby Smart's history of coordinator hires, outside of Monken, they haven't been great on the offensive side. And obviously, Georgia has won double-digit games every single year since 2017. So clearly, it works to that extent. But if Georgia expects to be winning national championships, not being bounced in the quarterfinals, they're going to have to make an upgrade at OC, in my opinion, to kind of get back over the hump. And they've got to find a way to get some elite receivers through the portal. They got to get them through recruiting. Now, they did get Zachariah Branch through the portal from USC. So that's a guy that could potentially stretch the field. I really wanted him at Tennessee, but Georgia got him. Well, we'll see who's throwing to him next year. And speaking on Carson Beck, it's definitely saying something that he declared for the NFL draft and now is declared for the transfer portal, which tells me he didn't get a good draft grade. So to me, he's probably going to go to Miami because remember, his girlfriend is Hannah Cavender, who's a women's basketball player at Miami. So it would make sense for him to go to Miami for that reason. Because I saw he was also rumored to go to Ohio State, which I don't know if that's really a good fit. Because Ohio State could go and get basically any quarterback while they have Jeremiah Smith and all those other insane receivers. And I think they could do better than Carson Beck. And then Texas Tech was a third option, which would be crazy. I could see him turning into like a Kyle McCord there maybe. But Miami seems to make the most sense, considering that tie he already has. And, of course, Miami seems to be in the market for mercenary quarterbacks trying to replace Cam Ward. You're muted.
I'm back. So I think that's going to be the big question mark in Athens. And I'm gonna reiterate my point that I made it earlier. Is Kirby Smart is going to be, and again, his ability to recruit either from high school recruiting or transfer portal recruiting a good quarterback. And it brought up a great point, Nick. I mean, do you think that Stetson Bennett was elevated by his former OC and Mike Bobo kind of, couldn't keep that productive offense? Or do you think maybe a high-level quarterback can, help his offense despite Mike Bobo?
Yeah, it's a tough question because you remember Stetson Bennett was a walk-on. Like, he was a 0-star. And, of course, if you look at his main receivers, you have Brock Bowers as a 5-star, and it's obviously was the best rookie tight end, maybe one of the best rookie players in all of the NFL this year. But at the same token, Ladd McConkey was a 2-star recruit coming out of North Murray High School. I mean, he wasn't necessarily getting high-level recruits then. He just happened to hit on some diamonds in the rough. Georgia is not a diamonds in the rough program. Georgia is supposed to be getting top-level talent. And if you look at top-level talent like Justin Fields they've gotten, look at Brock Vandergriff. He retired after 1 year at Georgia. It is perplexing, and they keep on winning in spite of it, but you have to wonder, when does that magic run out if they continue to fail in that mission?
Yeah, I think, of course, Kirby Smart is not going anywhere because he is probably not on that juice that I don't think any NFL team, and we're going to talk about a lot of coach openings in the National Football League, but I don't think any NFL team is considering Kirby Smart. But he is so successful at Georgia that he's probably going to stay there if he wants for more like 4 or 5, even 6 years.
Oh, yeah. Kirby's going to stay at Georgia for as long as he wants, unless things really fell off the rail or there were some sort of violations. I mean, which granted could happen at Georgia. I wouldn't put that out of the realm of possibility. But until something forces him out, he's not leaving.
Yeah.
I mean, and this year was not a failure for Georgia. They shouldn't see it as a failure. I mean, they won the SEC championship. I mean, come on, like it just, yeah, it was a good season. Um, of course, we already kind of alluded to Penn State, Boise State. I don't know how much to really say about Boise State. Obviously G5 representative. I thought they put up a good fight. Their kicker, I don't know what happened to him in that game. He just completely melted down, missed like every kick. And Ashton Genty was going to have to go Super Saiyan in this game for them to win, and that just didn't happen. So Penn State outclassed them. That was a good effort. Good season for Boise State. Obviously, Notre Dame, Penn State ongoing 10-3. We have a halftime show. Nate Smith. I don't know who that is. So anyway, he's having a halftime show as we await the second half of the Orange Bowl. Now, tomorrow night in Dallas, who is getting snow and ice right now. So I don't know how people are going to make it to the stadium.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to call my brother to see how things are doing in Dallas Fort Worth metro area, because he's probably gonna have a tough time tomorrow.
Oh yeah, basically what's falling there now is what's going to be falling on top of me tomorrow here in Chattanooga. But it would also pour down on Oregon in the Rose Bowl, which was actually the Rose Bowl stadium right now is actually an evacuation zone for the LA wildfires. They're staging a bunch of animals there because of the fires. I believe the stadium itself is fine, but other parts of Pasadena actually did get burned down. But yes, last week's game was I was stunned watching this. Like the first half of this game was stunning. To watch Ohio State get a 34-0 lead on their way to a 41-21 win. I couldn't believe what I was watching. I could not believe what I was watching.
Yeah. I mean, going to this game, we all question, can Oregon beat Ohio State for a second straight time? And the question definitely no. And what I kind of brought up in the previous episode of the pod is that Dan Lanning's ability to win on a big spot, and he definitely failed big time.
Oh, absolutely. It's unfortunate, right? Because he went undefeated, won the Big Ten in his inaugural year in the conference, but no one's going to remember any of that. No one's going to remember the regular season win over Ohio State. Everyone's going to remember them getting absolutely punked in the Rose Bowl. And it was one thing for Tennessee to get blown out on the road in Columbus like that, okay? It was another thing for Oregon, a team that was better built, in my opinion, to compete with Ohio State. They probably had one of the few 2 or 3 rosters that could actually hang with Ohio State when Ohio State's playing at that level, and they just didn't. They couldn't do it. They had no chance. Oregon's pass defense got absolutely exposed in this game. What we saw from Jeremiah Smith was legendary. The question, would Jeremiah Smith be the number 1 pick in this year's draft as a true freshman?
I think he'll be in the top 10, top 15.
Yeah, I think at the bare minimum he'd be at least the first receiver taken at it. It's unreal just how insane I heard someone compare him to basically if you had to Frankenstein create a wide receiver in a lab, you would get Jeremiah Smith. And it's not to mention they have a Booga, that they have Carnell Tate, who are also elite receivers who are going to go to the NFL. Will Howard's making all the right reads. He's putting his receivers in places to make plays. And not to mention they have 2 NFL running backs as well, in Trevion Henderson and Kenshawn Junkins. And then on defense, obviously everyone talks about that offense. Ohio State's defense has been playing amazing, too. I mean, look what they did to us a couple of weeks ago. And then look what they did to a Heisman finalist and Dylan Gabriel. They made him look silly in the first half. Yeah, for Dan Lanning, this is humbling because with the resources Oregon has, they're going to be in this spot again. And the question is, when you have equal talent to a team like Ohio State and you're Oregon, because I'd say Ohio State was probably a little more talented than Oregon, but it shouldn't have been that. Like Oregon no-showed in this game.
Yeah, definitely. It was definitely a disaster for for Oregon, but for Ohio State as well. I mean, really is impressive what Ryan Day turned around from a disastrous performance against their main rival at home to going to the Cotton Bowl as probably I would say they're favorites. They're
Oh yeah,
definitely favorites.
yeah. Right now, like especially watching this game right now, I don't think either one of these teams are beating Ohio State, assuming they get past Texas tomorrow. Now let's get to Texas real quick because Texas is lucky to be playing tomorrow. They should have lost to Arizona State because remember what I said about Boise State, how they needed Ashton Genty to be Superman, and he wasn't. Well, Cam Scatabo was Superman for Arizona State. This guy was puking on the sideline throughout the game. He came in, threw a touchdown pass, had long touchdown passes, was willing his team, willed them to overtime. And then credit to Quinn Ewers, who I've called for multiple times to be benched throughout the year. He hit a big pass on 4th and 13 to send to double overtime. They hit another big pass to go up, and then Sam Levitt threw an interception. Now, the most controversial part of this game was a targeting call that was not a targeting call at the end of the fourth quarter. And it was ruled not targeted because, quote, the runner was giving himself up. Well, if we're going to have that distinction, then what is targeting? Like, what's the point of it? Because, like, the whole point of targeting is to prevent hits to the head. So we try to limit CTE in the future. Arizona State got robbed on that call. No, that's not what the sole reason why they lost. They had other reasons to win that game, and they shouldn't have waited until the end to get going because they only had 8 points in the fourth quarter. But at the same time, that was a horrific call. And man, if they had just made a stop on 4th and 13, we would have seen the upset of the tournament.
I would say the upset of the century in college football.
Well,
With
I don't know if it's upset of the century. I mean, Northern Illinois over Notre Dame, Appalachian State over
no,
Michigan.
no,
Those
but
are
but
much.
but those were in the regular season. For example, Notre Dame is playing for the semifinals, so at the end it didn't matter. It will be the upset of the century because the amount of favoritism the Longhorns had over Arizona State was probably one of the biggest disparities. Going to this game in a playoff game in this century in college football.
Yeah, because I remember on New Year's Eve, I remember Jason and I both, we were like, yeah, Texas by 50. Like
Yeah,
we
yeah.
didn't think Arizona State had a chance.
I was the most uh, conservative. I was kind of, I think I said Texas was going to win, but I didn't join your guys, Texas blowout train.
Yeah, and the reason why Texas didn't blow out Arizona State, in my opinion, obviously one, Cam Scatterbo's insane performance. Two, Steve Sarkisian's play calling in this game was horrific. Like they weren't, throwing the ball downfield in regulation. They were just throwing a bunch of screens. They couldn't do anything in regulation at all. Like they got up to a 14-0 lead and just stalled out. And some of the decision making, like some of the fourth downs they went for, and some of and then the kicker for Texas missing 2 big kicks in regulation. I mean, the team was in meltdown mode in the fourth quarter, and it is a miracle that they didn't lose. I mean, they were in full on miracle mode. And the thing about Sarkisian is I just don't trust him in big games. And he got away with this one because he was playing Arizona State. But if they were playing anyone else in the playoffs, they would have lost.
Yeah, it's kind of what we discussed about Penn State. They beat the teams they played, but definitely the flawed college football playoff system that it was, placed this year with the 12-team playoff benefited 2 teams that lost in their conference championships.
Yeah. But to give Penn State credit, though, they dominated all their games to get to this point. Texas definitely did not. But hey, Texas is in the semifinals, so you got to give them credit. And I'll say this: I think this game showed to me more than anything what these playoffs can be. Because the whole idea of a 12-team playoff is right. You get more games. You could get more epic games, potentially big upsets, like you see in March Madness. This game showed that's possible. And maybe you don't get a game like that every single year, but these games are possible. And this game alone convinced me. And what a play! Deep throw for Notre Dame. And they're in red zone to number 20, Williams.
Hey, Williams. Wow, what a catch.
Yeah, is Riley in? Because the second half has started in Miami. Yeah, so now they are in the red zone at the 19. Okay, Riley Leonard is back in from injury in the red zone. 12 minutes left in the third quarter. And we're going to have a run to the 10, to the 5, down to the 3-yard line. For the Fighting Irish, it's first and goal, 3 yards away from tying the game in Miami. Wow. Definitely will keep you posted on what happens in the Orange Bowl. But kind of back to what I was saying about Texas and Arizona State, I'm all in on a 12-team playoff. There was a lot of hesitation after that first round, I think, with all the blowouts, to saying, oh, did we waste our time expanding? No. This showed that we can have some great games.
Yeah, that's the point. Like, it's not the problem. The system the problem is not in the system. It's the way the matchups were placed. I think there should be no reseeding. It's so simple. The first 4 teams in the rankings buys, but if a team that is not on the top 4 wins their conference championship, they're in. It's simple. It shouldn't be complicated.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's going to happen after next year for sure, because we can't have some of the things happen. Touchdown Fighting Irish. The luck of the Irish in the end zone. And that was Riley Leonard for 3 yards out. And they find the end zone for the first time today. So it's about to be a tied game in the Orange Bowl. We've got ourselves a game. Anyway, so, yeah. And also, I think, too, a point of discussion, all top 4 seeds lost. Oregon, Georgia, Penn State, and Boise State. Or no, not Penn. Boise State and Arizona State. Is that of any concern to you? Do you think it's just kind of like a trick of the matchups, injury luck, or is it a further sign of a flaw in the system?
I think that what we should discuss, I think kind of what college football playoff system complains, it reminds me a lot of the MLB playoffs, where what was the discussion? Oh, the teams that went to the wild card and won ended up winning on the divisional rounds because they were hot. And then the other team, remember how much complaint there were? I feel kind of the same, the teams that won at home kind of got a boost and ended up, getting to the quarterfinals. Ohio State, Penn State, Texas, Notre Dame.
Okay, I'll say this. I kind of disagree with this, and here's why. When you look at these 4 individual matchups, Ohio State was just more talented than Oregon. Notre Dame benefited from playing Georgia's backup quarterback and playing in a really weird situation in New Orleans with everything that transpired last week. And then Penn State and Texas both were more talented than their opponents. So I think it's partially the seeding and partially the matchups that we saw. So I don't think it's necessarily going to be a bad thing to have top 4 seeds, especially if they properly see the teams from 1 to 12 moving forward. Because to me, when you think about it, it's for most of those teams, it was 3 weeks between the end of the regular season and those first round playoff games right before Christmas. And then it's an extra 2 weeks before playing in the quarterfinal matchups on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. And football isn't as much of it has momentum, but it's way different type of momentum than baseball because in baseball, right? Like there's momentum to your pitching, there's momentum to hitting that you don't have in football. So I don't buy that.
That's fair. But I kind of think if I am, for example, Penn State or Texas, I think they were benefited from losing their conference and having a home playoff game. But
Yeah. Well, it's because it got really good matchups because of the whacked out seating. I don't
yeah,
necessarily because they got an extra game. Because I think playing extra games of football just gives you a lot more wear and tear. Because in baseball, you don't really have the same wear and tear that you have in football. Like football is a uniquely physical sport that any rest you get is good. Like it's not like basketball, not like baseball to me. Where in those sports, a long rest is to me very detrimental. In football, I think it's exactly the opposite. I mean, why do you think you saw like the Chiefs rest everyone this past week or the Eagles rest Saquon? Because they know they need them this week and next week to absorb all of the big time hits that are coming in the postseason.
yeah, it, yeah. To your point, I think the it's a mix between those two, and at the end, that's what college football lives for. It's that those kind of you know narratives.
Absolutely. That's what makes it so entertaining and so fun. Because, after the Ohio State game, I had some discussion with some folks saying, man, after seeing Tennessee get blown like that, I just don't know college football is as fun to me as it used to be. And I'm just like, dude, like this is the most entertaining sport in the world to talk about because of all the chaos that happens in it. And we saw in that round how chaotic that was. And this game's developing to be chaotic as well. I mean, 10-10 in the third quarter. Well, Drew Allard is 5 of 13 for 53 yards. Oh, man. I stand by my take that Drew Allard is not good. Because remember, we had a debate about that in the last episode, if Drew Allard was good or not. Drew Allard is not good. So, in any case, one other thing that's becoming a topic of discussion is the SEC because, man, it's not just Georgia losing. It's not just Texas being the only SEC team that's left. You also saw Alabama lose to Michigan. You also saw, South Carolina lose to Illinois. And Ole Miss did beat Duke. Ole Miss beat Duke. But, man, the SEC overall just has had a really poor postseason. They finished off, I believe, with a 7-6 record, not including what will happen tomorrow. Should the SEC be concerned about how this postseason is transpired? Do we think it's just a unique season where the teams aren't as good? And we know when you look at recruiting and look at the talent that's coming in that they're going to get better and they're going to be back on top of college football? Or do we think the Big Ten and Notre Dame have made serious gains on the SEC?
Yeah, I think it was a mix of both. And also, for example, do you really think Alabama went full strength against Michigan? Because Michigan went to this bowl game with the mentality of we're done. We can lose 55-0. The game that we had to win, we did. And Alabama was in a mix of disappointed, we didn't get in, we're gonna have to play. So I think that's what played for Michigan's favor. South Carolina, I mean, Shane Beamer, I don't understand what was that tantrum in the sidelines. Maybe that affected the way his team performance because I think of all the SEC bowls, South Carolina, I was expect to win because Illinois is not on the top, way further on the top of the Big Ten.
Right. And to me, that destroys the whole because there's a whole debate over hypothetical SEC matchups. So Like, what if you put Alabama or South Carolina in place for SMU at Penn State? Well, Alabama or South Carolina would have lost at Penn State because ultimately they just weren't as good as Penn State this year. Um, and that's something I have to admit I was completely wrong about. Like, I've sat here all year saying with confidence that I thought the top half of the SEC could go and beat anyone else from any other conference. And I'll be honest, I was wrong on that because when I was looking at the parity, looking at the close competition in SEC, I was kind of excusing maybe the sloppy play. I was thinking like, oh, they're just making them each other play sloppy because they're playing these are elite talents. This is mini NFL. No, they were legit just that sloppy. And we have seen better SEC football in the past that we didn't see this year.
Yeah, I think, the Southeastern Conference as a whole had this, it kind of gets the narrative of, is it the downgrade of the SEC or an upgrade from the Big Ten? Because, a lot of those matchups, like that we just mentioned, Alabama, Michigan, Tennessee, Ohio State, Big Ten winning against the SEC.
Right. Well, I think there's two things here. One, transfer portal is just not allowing teams like Alabama and Georgia and other SEC teams to stack talent, right? Because, like, if you're a backup at one school, you're going to go to another school and play. And then two, let's be real, Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, those teams have more money. I mean, look at the money that they're spending. They have more money than SEC teams. And the SEC is going to have to figure out how to make up the difference to spend with the Big Ten, because the Big Ten just, when you look at the endowments, look at their alumni, there's more billionaires that came out of Michigan or Ohio State than Tennessee. I mean, that's just the facts, unfortunately. I mean, there's some billionaires that come out of Tennessee, too. There's a lot of money in Tennessee. We paid, like $11 million for our football team this year? Well, Ohio State paid 25. And that is going to be a huge difference to overcome unless that money is made up.
And my final point on the college football before we move on, definitely talk about still Ohio State, Texas, is this new Wild West college football is going to make money really determine the winner? Because if you think about it, only Major League Baseball really has a money power kind of money buys championship. In the NFL, you can be a trillionaire, but there's salary cap, there's draft, but so I think college football is kind of getting to the same point as Major League Baseball.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing teams make desperate moves. Like, for example, I don't know if you saw this, but Northern Illinois, the Huskies, are going to the Mountain West, leaving the MAC because, they're going to get more money playing in the Mountain West, even though that's nowhere close to DeKalb, Illinois. There are no mountains in Illinois. But Illinois is going to go there. I mean, and obviously they're not going to win any championships, but hey, they got to find a way to make any money possible. So at some point, there's going to have to be some regulation to balance this all out. Otherwise, there's just going to be a race to the top of how much teams can pay. And what I'm concerned about in the long term is how many programs are eventually going to step back and say, we have no chance. What are we doing here? Like, there's eternal discussions already at Temple in Philadelphia in the American Conference saying, do we really have any chance at college football? And is it worth us continuing to fund this program?
Or do you think, and maybe this is a wild point, we'll see programs going to the FCS?
Maybe, or you create like a mid-tier division, like just let the G5 be their own thing. Because, let's be real. I mean, at a certain point, you're gonna see programs basically break away who can actually pay to play big boy football. And I think that's where it's ultimately gonna go because this is not sustainable. Like Baylor, like in the Big 12, do we expect Baylor to ever spend on a level to win a national championship? Do you expect Arizona to spend on that level? Do you expect Washington State to spend on that level? No. Like it's just not it's not sustainable. And what I worry about too is for teams with those smaller programs, as conferences become less regional, as rivalries get destroyed, do they start to lose interest, and then does college football start to lose fans? Similar to what we have seen with NASCAR. Just pointing that one out there.
Yeah, that's and ultimately is a big failure, and it just shows how incompetent the National Collegiate Athletics Association is. It's the most inefficient sporting body in America.
Yeah, the only reason why they get away with all this, we're all emotionally attached to these teams, and the games are so entertaining. Like, holy cow, what a hit on that punt. I don't know if you saw that, but that was a hard hit by Notre Dame. It's still 10-10, middle of the third quarter. Yeah, and I think that you have gone out, guys. I cannot hear you. You are muted. Gus, you're muted. And I think Gus is muted, so we cannot hear him. I don't know if I'm muted or he is muted. But yeah, can you hear me, Gus?
Yeah, I can. Sorry. I had to step aside a second.
Yeah, so I was just confused if you were still
No.
if you were trying to contribute another point there. But yeah, the only reason why they get away with it is because we are also emotionally attached to college football. But yeah, but to kind of, I guess, finalizing all this playoff stuff, obviously Notre Dame, Penn State going on right now. First, just real quick, who do we think is going to pull this thing out?
Penn State.
I'm going to be honest. I like Notre Dame's momentum right now. Give me Notre Dame.
Ooh.
And then Ohio State, Texas. What does Texas have to do to give themselves a shot here?
That's a great question.
So to me, Texas has to find a way to peak utilize the athletes that they have. Like, don't let Ohio State out athlete you. If you're Texas, you're good enough to not let that happen. And you're good enough to stay in this game. But at the end of the day, Quinn Ewers is going to have to be incredible. He's going to have to play the game of his life. He's going to have to channel his inner Vince Young from 2005 to do this. But I'm just going to be honest here. I still think we're going to see Ohio State win by 2 or 3 touchdowns. Ohio State's that much better right now.
Oh, give me Texas.
Okay, right. That would be fun. Now, I will say this, though, just real quick. I just want your take on this. Watching Ohio State blow out Oregon made me feel a lot better about the Vols.
Yeah,
because it was clear to me that there was really nothing Josh Heupel could have done in Columbus to win that game.
Yeah,
we were just outclassed.
Yeah, totally. And it just shows how Ohio State is the favorite to win at all.
Yeah. Well, we will see what happens. If they lost tomorrow night, man, Ryan Day, that with this team, like Ryan Day has to win the Natty now. With this team, like Ohio State fans will run him out of town if they don't win a national championship with this team. Like the pressure is sky high for Ryan Day. I mean, it's literally life or death for him. To win a Natty.
Yeah.
Definitely not. The other 3 coaches definitely don't have near that much pressure to win. Maybe James Franklin has a lot of pressure, but not Ryan Day level pressure. Some quick other transfer portal news. Square White to Florida State interesting move here. I think to me, the signals that he was told to leave Tennessee. I think he was informed by the coaching staff that he wasn't going to have a big role moving forward because Grow White, unfortunately, just hasn't reached his potential. Like we saw him have a great performance in the 2022 Orange Bowl. Um, that has not translated into the last 2 seasons. And he's going to Florida State. So best of luck to him. And I think, of course, contributions. But we got Mike Matthews back, and that is huge. And additionally, we're bringing in Amari Jefferson from Alabama, Chattanooga born, played at Baylor School here. I think this is huge. I think the receiver room has gotten more talented, and I'm hoping we can get that big playability back we have sorely been missing for the last 2 years.
Yeah, definitely going to make an impact, and you know, we'll see how he's going to be utilized by Josh Heupel.
Right, and hopefully set up Nico for a lot of success next year. Now, calling all of these players' moves, all of their plays next year is the one, the only Mike Keefe, who is returning to Rocky Top as the voice of the Falls. He is replacing the retired Bob Kessling. Of course, we share a very special connection to Mike Keefe because he was also a WTK sports director before going on to work for the Vol Network and then being the voice of the Tennessee Titans for their entire existence until now. Man, when I heard this news this morning in the newsroom, I was so excited. This is the perfect hire for the Vol Network.
I was surprised, actually. I mean, I think that was the perfect replacement, but if you really think about it, only in the Southeastern Conference, only in the South, you see an NFL broadcaster going to college and see this as an upgrade.
Absolutely. And I think there's other circumstances there, too, that I'm going to get to here in a few minutes.
No, I was going to just finish that. If you say that in New York or even Florida, Florida, say in New York or Massachusetts or even LA, it would be the opposite. The upgrade would be going from college to the NFL. But in Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, it's the opposite.
Right. Because, you think about John Ward. John Ward is the legend in the state. People still talk about John Ward. In the state of Tennessee, it's about the Vols. The Vols matter more than anything else sports-wise. And being the voice of the Vols comes with massive responsibility. He's only going to be the 5th person ever to have that responsibility. Ever. Yeah, you had Lindsey Nelson. I forget the guy after him. Then you had John Ward for decades.
I have the list here. So the first was Lindsey Nelson from 1948 to 1950. Then we had George Mooney from 1952 to 1957. Then we had the legendary John Ward. That I remember when he passed away, it was like 2018, I would say. I was in Knoxville, with WTK, and there was a deep sense of, gratitude and definitely remembers. And Bob Castle, Bob, I mean, I'm so grateful for him because I remember deep in the beginning of COVID era when I had to finish my final project for graduating Palo State. I was doing a series of podcasts called Voices of Knoxville, and I was say I need to get him because he is the voice of sports in Knoxville in this 21st century, and he nicely sat down, not sat down, because we had to be, social distancing. And so we had to do it virtually, but he took the time in that hard time in that time to record a podcast with me. And I still remember to this day how great it was. So Bob Kessling, for me, legendary. I remember, talking to him on that SEC championship in 2021 was kind of the beginning of everything, and we were like, what's going to happen? And I took a picture with him. I'll never forget, like the 2 people that represented radio in Knoxville. I was for WTK, he was of course for Vol Network, WNML. So I'm think though, and Mike Keith also, we remember how fun it was to have him at Rockstar Sports. How he always took the time to talk to us. He didn't care that we were like, oh, he's just a college station for UT. No, he always remembered the time he spent there, and always, stop by to join our pod or you know
Yeah, I mean, it was just getting to talk to him. That was probably my favorite single show we ever did. I mean, getting to talk to him, getting to understand his experience, just trying to notice how he communicated on the radio. Um, Being with a guy like him is unbelievable. And to have him be the voice of the Vols, a thing that means just so much. I mean, the Vols are a part of the lifeblood of Tennessee. Being from Tennessee, for a lot of people, a part of it means you're Vol. And he understands that. He's from Waverly. He grew up going to games in Knoxville. He talked about going to Litton's or going to Big Ed's in Oak Ridge. And his dad almost played at Tennessee but wasn't able to. And he knows. He understands what it means. And but there's a little bit of sadness there because like I've known him growing up as the voice of the Titans, and I'm gonna miss him in that role because he made Titans football exciting on the radio. But obviously, to me, the Vols are number one in the hierarchy. They're at the top, and he will be able to better communicate that better than anyone. And I'm curious to see what he takes from the Titans and puts it in the Vols broadcast. Like I expect, the sack to be brought over. And obviously, I can only imagine the first touchdown that we get is going to hit like crack. I'm just imagine he'll be like, touchdown, Nico, lava. Like
no,
that is going to hit like
no,
crack,
no,
man.
no. He has to do that. Touchdown, Vols. He has to do that. Like he do touchdown, Titans.
Yeah.
He
And
has to do that.
it's gonna be just like the sack, and man, it's gonna be crazy. And Bob Kesseling, he gets a lot of unnecessary hate, in my opinion. Yeah, he could have been more emotive as a broadcaster, but he kind of he played it straight. He played it objectively, and I respect that. Although from a radio broadcaster, home team radio broadcaster, I could stand to see more homerism and emotion, like the way you call games, Gus. Like you are extraordinarily emotional during your games, and
But
do
I think
not.
it's a matter of a kind of like culturally, kind of. It's I think broadcasting was a more classical broadcaster. He reminds me a lot of the soccer broadcasters in Brazil of the 80s, Felipe Fiore Giriotti, those kind of, that they have a tones of a poetic kind of calm, but at the same time precise and, in kind of analytical ways. So I get there are different types of broadcaster. I'm kind of the one emotional and more, transpiring, kind of, kind of express what the fan is thinking about. But there are other ones who's more like But I always remember how Bob was always a smooth voice for the Vols.
Right, and it's the voice of my childhood. So I appreciate the work that he has contributed to the Vol Network. But I am extraordinarily excited for Mike Keith. I mean, seeing the preview videos, the hype up videos, man, I if I wasn't at work, man, I would have started yelling. It just. I'm just like I was showing Millie the video, and she had no idea why I was just had a smile wide on my face, and I'm just like, I know you don't know why I'm so happy right now, but I'm so happy right now. It's just I cannot wait. Like I'm gonna have to actually do the thing where you mute the TV and then listen to the game on the radio because I want to listen to Mike Keith call some of these games.
I'm so glad for the internet that I'm able to hear the Vol Network here in Brazil. That makes a total difference. It's really awesome to have that kind of experience. And for me, what I like about Mike Keith calling games is that his sharpness, like touchdown, suspense, Vols, or touchdown, Titans.
Yeah. Just welcome back. Let's go do this. And for Mike Keefe, I am glad that he's going to get to call games for a good football team. Now, if you've been watching for the last hour, you might be wondering, why is there a paper bag behind me? Now, obviously, I've been glowing for the last few minutes. Let's get to the dark part of this episode, because this is going to be a very dark, a very uncomfortable and unhappy part, because we got to talk about the Tennessee Titans and the clown show and disaster that has unfolded over, well, frankly, the past 3 years, but has really gotten ugly the past couple of days. So obviously they lost to Houston the other day. That is, to be expected. But the fact is, first and foremost, and I want to unravel this one at a time, they lost to Houston in the Oilers uniforms. Which just, I'm going to say, it makes you look like an absolute clown organization. Like, like, if you're going to try to wear a uniform to disrespect a city, and then you're going to go out and lose to them in embarrassing fashion, it makes you just look like clowns. And, like, why roll out those uniforms when you're 3-13? And you know your team sucks. But you're going to do that anyway? Like, that's problem number one. And trust me, I've got a list. I'm like Martin Luther when he went to the Catholic Church in the 1500s. I've got a list of 95 theses here. Okay, so that's problem number one, Gus. Why are we rolling out Oilers uniforms at 3-13?
Especially when you're facing a way better Houston team. I think this should be it was a way to make this game kind of, we're throwing back when we were in Houston against Houston and we got, beat by Houston.
Yeah, I mean, first and like, it really, a lot of these problems go back to the same thing, but I kind of want to leave that in suspension. So obviously they lose to Houston, and then because of the Patriots winning, thank you, Joe Milton, by the way, the Titans get the number one pick, which is probably the only good thing that's happened to the Titans over the past week. They get the number one pick. So we go about a day or two. We hear no news. No one can find Amy Adams Strunk. And let's just say I've heard things about Amy Adams Strunk. I'm not going to repeat them here because I don't know if they're true or not. If you ask me off the air, I will tell you them, but I will not tell you them here on the podcast. Because legally, as a journalist, I'm not going to repeat them because I've been trained to know better than to say certain things. But let's just say she was absent for 2 days post this loss, and then comes out on Tuesday and decides to fire the general manager, Aaron Carfon. Now, I will say this. I don't necessarily disagree with this because I have been extraordinarily critical of this general manager. And to me, he really, frankly, lost me when he drafted Will Levis over Hendon Hooker. And that was one of his first decisions as a Titans GM. And to me, that was a non-starter. So I'm not necessarily mad at that. But what I'm mad and upset about is now, over the past 3 years. So we went from the number one seed in 2021, of course, lost to the Bengals in the wild card, or the divisional round, excuse me, because they're number one seed. From there, a year later, what you see is A.J. Brown gets traded. Right, he got traded right after that 2021 playoff loss. And then, of course, John Robinson later that year gets fired because he traded away A.J. Brown. And then you let Derrick Henry go. You cut Ryan Tannehill. Of course, you bring in Will Levis. Then you fire Mike Vrabel, who was the best head coach in the history of your franchise. You bring in Brian Callahan, who starts off at 3-14. You're not going to fire him, though, even though, frankly, his coaching job this year sucked. Like, I thought he had a roster that could win at least 6 or 7 games, and, well, he won 3. So it was a failed coaching job. But we're not going to fire him. So we're going to do this thing where we're going to fire a GM but keep the head coach. Then you're going to hire a new GM who ran Carfon, who Mike Vrabel told you, I don't think he's that good of a GM. You shouldn't hire him. You do it anyway. Then you go through, have another bad season. Now we're going to blame the head coach, and Mike Vrabel, who had just taken you to multiple playoff appearances, multiple division titles. But no, he's not doing good enough, so we're going to fire him. Now every team wants him in the NFL. So now we're going to fire, and now touch on Notre Dame, by the way. Jeremiah Love takes the lead early in the 4th quarter. So you're going to fire Mike Vrabel. We're going to keep Ran Carfon, though. Let's let Ran cook. Let Ran cook. Let him give himself a new head coach. So we're going to go get Brian Callahan. Another season goes by. It's your 3-14. Your quarterback can't complete a pass to save his life. Throws a pick 6 every single week. And it's an absolute embarrassment to the franchise. When we all knew especially that he sucked to begin with. I saw this guy play in college and couldn't throw over 100 yards on a terrible pass defense in the 2022 Vols. But apparently he was good enough to be the franchise quarterback for the Tennessee Titans. So, in any case, he gets the GM fired. So now we're sitting here in a position where we got a head coach who probably sucks, but we don't know definitively because he doesn't have that good of a team to coach. We have no GM. We're sitting in a position where, and I'm going to share this because this, if there's any depth to show how far the Tennessee Titans have truly fallen, this is a tweet from CBS insider Jonathan Jones, where in a request for the Bears assistant general manager, the NFL reviewed the Titans GM job description, which could determine which secondary football executives will be allowed to interview for the role. And then you look further up, and more recent, they say that the NFL has reviewed the Titans GM position, and the two sides have agreed that the vacant position will be the primary football executive post. And the reason why this is important is because Amy Adams said that the president of football operations, Chad Brinker, would hire and oversee the GM. So the GM who is supposed to be the head of football operations is being overseen by somebody else. So is the GM really a GM, or is a GM someone who's not the GM? And if he's not the GM, then the NFL could punish the Titans because they're being misleading. They're being unsure of what they want. And this goes back to really the central problem to me in all of this. I think we have an owner who has no idea what she's doing. Where she's making emotional decisions like bringing the Oilers uniforms out because that was where her dad was from. That's where the franchise was from. And clearly, she emotionally just hates Houston. And she wants to beat Houston no matter what. And is willing to clown the whole franchise to make a point to Houston. Doesn't know what she wants with her leadership. Makes impulse rash decisions. Now think about this. She fired John Robinson after AJB torched the Titans back in 2022. And then she decided to fire Ran Carfon after losing to Houston in the Oilers uniforms. She makes rash decisions. And then coming out and saying, oh, Chad Brinker is the actual person who's going to hire, not me. So therefore, Chad Brinker, he's the general manager, not the general manager. So why would any competent person who could be the general manager come to Tennessee to be the general manager? Gus, am I going crazy? Or does this make any sense?
I think we got to get a point where maybe the Titans are getting a little bit like the Chicago White Sox, where you have such a incompetent, confusing ownership that fans just get tired of it and either get alienated or uh, outraged.
Yeah, it just the organization chart makes no sense because the GM should be the head of football operations, not this head of football operations. Like, what does he do? Who is making the final decisions over coaching, over player personnel? Because the GM should report directly to the owner. And it sounds like in this case, the GM is not doing that at all. The Titans are a disaster. And I don't know how you fix that. Because ultimately, in this situation, I fear that we're in a White Sox situation, that we're in an Sacramento A's situation where the owner is so bad that the only way it can change is if they sell the team, which you can't necessarily force unless you have a Donald Sterling situation. So outside of a scandal saving the Titans, is there any hope?
I don't want to be pessimistic, but I understand why you put a trash bag in your background.
Yeah, I mean, this is just looking at the situation rationally. I don't know what I'm supposed to be excited for. Like when there's a new stadium coming, and the team is absolute garbage. And then yes, you got the number 1 seed, but there's no good quarterbacks in this draft, in my opinion. Like Shador Sanders, to me, is not worthy of the number 1 pick. I think he's inconsistent. I think he benefits from having Travis Hunter. That would be a waste of a pick. Cam Ward is incredibly reckless. Incredibly reckless. I don't want that guy. And plus, he quit on his team halfway through a bowl game. I don't want that attitude. We saw what happened with Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis. I don't want that in Nashville. So then what do you do with quarterback, right? Because Will Levis obviously isn't the answer. Do you go and pick up a guy like Aaron Rodgers? Do you pick up a guy like Sam Darnold if he hits the market? Although I don't think he's going to. Do you pick up a guy like Kirk Cousins? I mean, this is not good. They're not going to be any better next year. And of course, for the non-Vol Titans fans, on top of all that, you just lost Mike Keefe. Now, granted, I get to keep Mike Keefe. He's just now the voice of my college team. But man, this has just been one L after the other for the Tennessee Titans. This has been one of the most brutal stretches I can remember.
Yeah, because of course, when the Titans came into Nashville, they went, no better way to arrive. Going to the postseason, being 1 yard away from winning the Super Bowl, and 4 years ago, they were the best team in the AFC and they blew it, and now they have no hope. That's the worst part of any sports team in the world. It's okay to be bad. And by the way, Penn State touchdown. So
Nicholas
what?
Singleton. Man, this game is going to be epic at the finish here.
Oh yeah, but I think the Titans are on the limbo, kind of like the Chicago White Sox, the Houston Rockets in the NBA, where there's no like, oh, we're gonna be bad then good. Like we're gonna be bad, and we don't know when we're gonna be competitive again.
Yeah, I'll say this. Here's what I would do if I were the Titans in this situation. You have 2 options. One, you draft Travis Hunter with the number 1 pick. I think he's by far the best player in this draft. You can use him in a variety of ways. You do draft number 1, you find a Band-Aid to the quarterback this year, and you draft a quarterback next year because you're not going to be any good next year. And the quarterbacks next year are much better. That's option 1. Option 2, you trade back with someone who desperately wants Shador Sanders or Cam Ward, and you accumulate draft picks, and once again, you tank for a quarterback next year. You cannot settle for Shador Sanders or Cam Ward. I think that is a mistake that will once again set the franchise back even further. And honestly, would put me in a spot questioning, why am I following this team at all? You know, like, I mean, I'm already questioning, why am I following this team at all? Like, if the owner is this bad and this incompetent, I mean, this is not like college where, like, yeah, you can get rid of this person, that person, things can change, like what we saw with Danny White and Josh Heupel. I mean, who is the like? Forget a football coach. Who's the Danny White for the Titans? Who's going to come in and change that culture? I mean, you can't, because you got to get rid of the owner. And right now, the only thing they're really concerned about is selling PSLs for their new stadium and pricing out the regular fan. So, and that new stadium is going to have nothing but visiting fans come opening day in 2027 at the way they're going. So, yeah, I'll say this because my question I put on here was, is there any positives? Mike Keefe is getting to call games for a good football team. That is the positive. That is the positive in this situation. So,
Yeah, I think right now the Titans definitely need to look in the mirror and see where they're gonna go.
yeah, they need to figure out if they're going to be a serious franchise once again. All right. Some other big news, of course, I referenced the Patriots fired Gerard Mayo after 1 year. I felt like that was undeserved to me. Like, I thought Gerard Mayo didn't do a terrible job this season. He didn't have that good of a roster, and I thought that team played better throughout the year. And hey, shout out to Joe Milton, man. I was stunned at how good Joe Milton looked in that game on Sunday. Granted, he was playing against backups. Same thing we saw with Levis last year, no tape. I doubt Joe Milton will be able to do that performance again down the road in the NFL. But hey, he made some plays in that game that show you why Joe Milton's in the NFL, because he has an insane arm that very few other quarterbacks have in the league. Additionally, the Colts, a lot of the Colts fans, obviously I have a lot of friends who are Colts fans. I don't know if you had any thoughts about Joe Milton real quick and his performance.
I think definitely the Patriots have two good quarterbacks. Joe Milton and Drake May can be a good duo. The problem is that I understand why the coach was fired, why Mayo was fired, because he just brought a new face to an old system. He kind of went Belichick, and Robert Kraft has to get like Danny White did with the interception.
Yeah. Disaster for Riley Leonard. Disaster. I don't know if you saw the surrender Cobra, but wow, that bad throw. What was Leonard looking at here? Man, because he was looking off to his left and he just threw it right to. Man, that didn't have a chance. Disaster. But yeah, I'll be curious to see what happens with Milton. Does the team inquire to trade him?
Yeah, that could be an option, definitely.
Because I think he could be on the trading block, and also J.J. McCarthy might be on the trading block too, because it seems like the Vikings are going to keep Sam Darnold. Of course, McCarthy coming off of an ACL this offseason. Who would you rather have between Milton or McCarthy?
McCarthy.
I would agree with that. McCarthy is more refined. Although, what will his athleticism be after the injury? Or Hendon Hooker, could he be on the block at some point as well, seeing that he is just stuck behind Jared Goff in Detroit? The Colts sticking with their head coach and general manager, our good friend Jason, and several other friends I have are Colts fans, are very upset with that decision. Because to me, there seems to be some serious internal organizational rot. Now, from the outside looking in, I don't think it's as bad as what we're seeing in Tennessee. But clearly what you saw with Anthony Richardson this year was not good. And just listening from what some of my friends have said, That Jason said there were like 7 or 8 players in his opinion, including Jonathan Taylor, that he thought gave their all for Indianapolis this year. And, I didn't watch the Colts week in and week out like they did. But seeing that what happened with Anthony Richardson, I can tend to believe it. And I think what you saw this past week, Pat McAfee, who does a show in Indianapolis, his whole suite was empty during the game, like, as a sign of protest. And he's been a guy who has been as pro Colts as anyone.
Yeah, I think the Colts are kind of in the same situation because they can't figure out the quarterback, Anthony Richardson. They thought they were going to draft the next Lamar Jackson. It doesn't look like it, so they don't know where to go.
Yeah, because Anthony Richardson just doesn't have it up here. He does not have it up here to win at a big-time level. And it's just brutal. And, oh my gosh, Drew Allar throws it back to Notre Dame. Wow, back and forth we go, but there's going to be a flag. Is that going to be on Notre Dame? He threw like a miracle jump ball down the field, and with 8:42 remaining in regulation, Penn State and Drew Allar have thrown an interception. Marcus Freeman's smiling, so I'm assuming this will not overturn the interception. Let's see what the call is. And it's going to be pass interference on the defense. Oh my gosh, the interception is overturned. Where is the pass interference? That looked clean. Let me see. All right. So they're going to call it a number 8. Yeah, he never turned around. You have to turn around. That is brutal. And the ball is going to be inside of the 10. So they go from interception to first and goal because number 8 for Notre Dame did not turn around. And look at the ball. That's a good pass interference call. Brutal break for Notre Dame. That's going to be a controversial call because some people, they're throwing stuff on the field. I thought Tennessee fans only did that. Notre Dame fans are throwing stuff on the field.
Do you know why, right? Do you know why? They tried to pull up a Texas Longhorn.
Oh man, this is crazy. They're throwing stuff on the field. So
they're gonna try to do what Texas did.
Yeah, just a wild scene in Miami. Clearly, the Irish have had a lot of fun down in Miami. Hey, if I were in Miami too, I would be having a lot of fun. But can't throw stuff on the field. First and goal for the Penn State Nittany Lions. Wow, what a turn of events there. But back on the Colts, they're not in the same. They're in a similar spot, but they're in a much better spot, right? If you could just find a quarterback, the Colts could be a playoff team. The Colts probably should have been a playoff team this year.
They were expected to make to the playoffs.
Absolutely. Like the Texans really weren't that great this year. And they were in tight games with them late. It's just a matter of one, finding the right quarterback. I don't think you can draft one, but they could totally trade for one and see if it would work. And that's a touchdown for Nick Singleton. And Penn State has taken the lead back. This has just been an amazing game. Classic game. Someone's heart is going to absolutely break at the end of this one. Man, what a game. This game, yeah. This also proves how good the 12-team playoff is going to be as we get more used to it. But anyway.
Yeah, just to finalize, I think that it was a disappointing for the Indianapolis Colts to not make the playoffs. I think that was a path, and definitely Jim Irsay is going to have a lot to think about in this offseason.
Oh, absolutely. To try to one thing, just trying to make sure the fans don't jump off the ship. But Colts fans, it can get worse. It can get a lot worse. Trust me. Also of interest here, speaking of a game in Miami, like we're watching right now, Penn State up 24-17 over Notre Dame. How about Tyreek Hill saying in the press conference, he's done. He wants out in Miami. He feels like he's given it everything he's had, but he wants to leave. He wants a trade. One, as a PR director, have you ever had a player say, I don't want to play at Rio Bronco anymore. I'm out.
Oh, that's why I don't understand some of the PR moves. As a PR, you have the sense of the locker room. Like I don't know if like a PR in the NFL, they probably have access to the locker room to talk to players and get the feeling. When you know about this, I don't know what the protocols are in the NFL. Like I don't know how those things work, but like if I'm a PR and I have a talk to Tyreek Hill and a feeling that he is gonna say something like that, I would have kind of say to him, go home, avoid the media." And I don't know if the like the Dolphins would have been fine if he was required, but I want to say like there is no rule like us like all the players should be available to media.
Absolutely, because there's a viral moment during the game where Jalen Waddle asked, "Hey Cheetah, are you done?" It was caught on a hot mic. So now it was asked by Jalen Waddle. And then, of course, Tyreek Hill went on the press conference to say, yeah, I want out of Miami. Yeah, a lot of players can pull that move, but Tyreek Hill is so talented. He can pull that move. And it's reminiscent a little bit of maybe like an Antonio Brown to an extent. Because Tyreek Hill, I think, has some similarities to Antonio Brown. In terms of some of the antics they've gotten involved in and their controversies.
Yeah, and I'm still thinking about what you said about how to deal this as a PR because if for example, like a real Bronco player after the game, made an interview, of course, but the problem is that I would understand if, for example, a reporter for like, I don't know what American TV network was, covering the game, but I understand if he would have made this speech on the field because you can't predict what they say. But he went to the locker room and everything. That's on the PR on the team because then that's on your control. Like if I know a player is kind of, has a lot to say, like and like say go home, like go through the back or something like that.
Yeah. Don't let them get in front of your mics, in front of those reporters. Who
Yeah.
clearly the reporters had a better sense of the locker room than the PR person did, and that should never happen. So, in any case, so if he gets out of Miami, where should he be traded to? Because one rumor is maybe the Chiefs are interested in reacquiring him at a lower price.
That would have been genius. Like the Chiefs are so genius that they don't panic. They let him go, and he is gonna come back way a lower price.
The team, though, I think would benefit the most, though, is the Ravens. I think the Ravens would, or the Bills. But the Bills probably won't happen because they're inter-division. But the Ravens would make a ton of sense, in my opinion.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think the Ravens would be a great add-on. I think Tyreek Hill and Lamar Jackson can do a lot of damage.
Now, granted, I don't know how that would make that work with the salary cap, but hey, that's just a suggestion. Okay, let's get into some Week 18 reactions because we talked a lot about the off-the-field situations. Is there any other, Black Monday stories that you think are worth? I know the Giants kept their front office, which, the fact that they stayed with Daniel Jones for that long, I don't think it's a good look. But, hey, that's what they do. Of course, the Jaguars, they fired their head coach, Doug Peterson, which meant, hey, Doug Peterson, he won that 2017 Super Bowl, and it's been all downhill ever since for him.
I think that was, the 2017 Eagles was kind of like 2019 LSU. The the coach had not as big influence as, because if you think about it, how, because everybody say, oh my god, the LSU Tigers football team of 2019, one of the best ever assembled, what a great team, and the coach of that team is still no jobs. So this says a lot about how the team had a lot of talent, but the coach did not make a big impact. That is kind of similar, probably, to Doug Peterson, the Eagles. That was
Yeah, and it just goes to show that some teams would not be the same without their coach, and then some teams don't necessarily need that coach. I mean, you said 2019 LSU was that type of team, 2017 Eagles. But then there's some teams I think that would not be anywhere close to the same if they had a different coach. Um, like the Lions right now, with what they've been built. Like Dan Campbell saved Detroit. Um, Also, the Raiders. The Raiders fired both their coach and GM. The Raiders, like the Titans, just seem like a wanderer. They're wandering in the desert like Moses in Exodus. They don't know where they're going. And if like the Titans, I mean, what is there to be excited about for the Raiders outside of the fact you got Brock Bowers, who's incredible?
and Antonio Pierce. It's I kind of it's like, do you know what I compare it to? It's kind of like a substitute teacher, like a substitute teacher. First, the students kind of like him because he's more loose. He has nothing to lose, and he was there to fill up a position. And then when he was confirmed as the head coach, then things change, and he clearly did not have the experience to guide a very troubling franchise.
Oh yeah, I just think that they've made a series of unserious moves, right? Like especially the Josh McDaniels hire a couple of years ago. Bad decision, just an awful decision. John Gruden looked like it was working out until he got himself embroiled in the controversy, um, and they really haven't recovered from Gruden going up in flames.
Yeah, because of course, when they had a long-term plan, and when that plan is cut short abruptly, then you really take yourself quite a while to remember.
Absolutely. We'll be certainly interested to see how all these openings get filled. Wow, what a freaking hurdle by Jeremiah Love in the backfield.
Wow.
A little bit more than 5 minutes remaining in the Orange Bowl. All right, so let's get into some Week 18 reactions. First and foremost, the Lions. They dominated the Vikings at home for the 1 seed. Man, it's going to be hard to beat Detroit in the divisional or NFC championship game, I think. They are the most complete team in the NFC by far. By far, but they are the most complete team in the NFC, in my opinion.
And you see how cohesive the coaching staff and the roster are. Dane Campbell has his team on the palm of his hand.
Oh
Oh,
my gosh!
whoa, whoa!
Touchdown Notre Dame! Where are we going? To the crib! Jaden Grayhouse, 54 yards. And it's going to be a tied game once again. This game is unbelievable.
Wow.
Man, and wow, the DB just fell down. Wow. Letting that happen in that spot.
If
Oh my goodness.
I don't want to create controversy, but could this be a room for interpretation of pass interference, or be it too much stretch?
Oh man. Well, yeah, I don't think there's any pass interference there. Let's see if Mitch Jeter can get it for the uprights, and he does. Wow, this game is incredible. 24-24. Wow.
That's the committee wanted all along.
Yeah, this game is unreal. Gus, I do need to step away for just a sec. I'll be right back.
Yeah. So while Nick, you know, comes back, I want to talk about a little bit of Brazilian football. Appreciate people um, watching us right now. Eh, Definitely, joining us here on this. Almost here in Brazil is already really late, but I'm here live. I want to give a big shout out to one of the best soccer historians I know, and he is a Rio Branco historian and big fan, Claudio Gioria, that I had the privilege to call friend. And great, so great to talk about Rio Branco. So big shout out to him, one of the best. He is kind of like what if he was in the United States, he would have been kind of what the Major League Baseball kind of historians are. So big shout out to Claudio Gioria. I believe Nick is back.
Yes. Yeah, so getting back into some NFL here as we wait for the remainder of the Orange Bowl. A little bit under 4 and 5 minutes left. A spot in the national championship on the line. It's 24-24. Legacy defining drive coming up for Drew Alar. The Bucks, they won the NFC South in what was an ugly game against New Orleans, but they pulled it out. Shout out to Baker Mayfield, right? When he took over for Tom Brady, a lot of people thought he was just a throwaway bridge quarterback, but he has won 2 straight division championships now in Tampa as a starting quarterback, and I think he should be commended for that.
No, yeah, but it's because I think Cleveland, and a lot of people are like, oh, maybe Cleveland had such a good roster that elevated Baker Mayfield. But since Baker Mayfield left, they haven't been to the playoffs. So I guess they had the right quarterback. They just were such a chaos.
Yeah, the Browns are just an awful franchise. Like the Titans, they're just a badly ran franchise, and sometimes good players are going to look bad in a bad situation. Maybe a bad player sometimes can look good in a good situation. I think of like Eli Apple on the Bengals, where he had some good performances there because he was on a really good team. But for the Bucks, they're a much better ran organization, and they're going to be hosting a playoff game this week because of it. Also, Ravens. Oh, go ahead.
And just real quick, because every time we had a divisional champion with uh, a little bit above average standings, we have, oh, it's so unfair. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers is the 4th seed, and the Minnesota Vikings the 5th seed. I don't know. I think it's different because winning a division is way harder, for example, than comparing to the conference championships. I don't know. I think it makes more sense to the divisional champions making having a uh, home field advantage than compared to the conference championship.
Yeah, in the NFL, the Bucks got the 3 seed. The Rams are the 4 seed. And you think about NFL teams in general are just much closer to each other as teams. Like, you don't see big spreads. Like, you don't see 30, 40, 50-point spreads in the NFL because those teams, there's not that big of a talent gap between teams. So there's not that same difference. And it's, as you said, you should have rewards for winning your division. It matters to win your division.
Yeah.
And speaking of winning division, the Ravens, they won the AFC North as well. No surprise here. I thought they would be the best team throughout the season heading to win that division. But the Steelers got to be a little bit sick because they really had a good shot to win it, but their offense fell apart down the stretch.
Yeah, it was an interesting Saturday night football. That kind of, both games to decide the winner of the AFC North. But in the end, the Ravens deserved it more.
Absolutely. And shout out to the Denver Broncos making their first playoff appearance. And I believe it's 8 years.
Yeah, 8 years. The last time was when they made their Super Bowl run.
Yeah, which
Which,
is absolutely crazy to think about.
no, 10 years, 9 years, because they went the 2015-2016 season.
Yeah, of course, they beat the backups for the Chiefs 38-0. Now, the Cincinnati Bengals fans who would have been in the playoffs if the Broncos had lost were furious, and they accused KC of sitting their players just to keep Cincinnati out.
Uh-huh. Cry me a river. I mean, you should get all this outrage not with the Kansas City Chiefs, but in your defensive coordinator.
Who got fired. So you can't start 4-8 and expect to make the playoffs. I mean, it's what it comes down to. And it's sad because I really wanted the Bengals to make it because they were playing as well as anyone the past 5 weeks. And it would have been incredible to go and see Burrow have to go on the road to Buffalo because we know what happened the last time that happened. But the Bengals screwed themselves.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah. Of course, Penn State now has the ball, and they're punting. So they went 3 and out. Less than 3 minutes left. Notre Dame now is going to get a chance potentially to win this football game. With less than 3 minutes left, can Riley Leonard give himself a legacy drive? So let's pick some of these NFL games. We'll start on the NFC side, the 5-4. And note about the Minnesota Vikings and the Los Angeles Rams. So this game was supposed to be in Los Angeles Monday, but because of those devastating wildfires that are ongoing, apparently there's still fires sparking off tonight, which is just horrifying. They are moving this game to Arizona. So it's going to be a neutral site game for the Vikings and the Rams. What do we think about this game? What are the keys to this one?
But let's be honest, Nick. I mean, of course, definitely it was a very hard situation to deal. But isn't like Rams fans have such a home field advantage? You know that LA football, professional football teams are still developing their connection with LA sports fans. You know, LA sports fans, they're really Lakers and USC fans. All the
Right.
rest, and Dodgers, Lakers, USC. The rest, um, Angels,
The
UCLA football.
Ducks, Kings.
Yeah, all the rest is kind of like, if they're good, they like. If they're not good, they don't care.
Right. I'll say this, when I look into this game, just purely from the football standpoint, the Vikings have been really, really good all year, but I have questions about Sam Darnold. He did not look good on Sunday in Detroit. He looked rattled. And the Vikings are going to need Darnold to play a lot better because the Rams throughout the second half of this season have been one of the best teams in the NFL since they got healthy. Since they got Kyron Williams back, since they got Puka Nacua back, since they got Stafford up to 100%, they look very solid to me. And Sean McVay has proven in the postseason he can win. He's won a Super Bowl with maybe not the most talented team in the world. He got to another Super Bowl with Jared Goff as quarterback before he was good in Detroit. The Rams here have the experience to me. And we all know Minnesota's history in the playoffs are not good.
Yeah, they are known to be chokers, and even on the kind of TV, for example, even on How I Met Your Mother, which people all over the world watch, one of the characters are from Minnesota, and he expressed a lot how one of his pains is the time and time again the Minnesota Vikings fails in the playoffs.
Yeah. And for me, I think it's going to be the same song and dance again. I think the Los Angeles Rams are going to win one for their city here, and the Rams are going to move on to the divisional round.
Give me Minnesota.
Okay, so in the second NFC game, 6-3, we got the Washington Commanders at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And man, when you look at this one, actually, we talked a bit about Baker, but what about Jaden Daniels? A rookie, amazing season with Terry McLaurin. What this team has done under Dan Quinn, and now they get to go on the road to play Tampa. What do we make of the command of this game here? Because this is, I think, one of the biggest wild card, maybe the biggest wild card of this entire wild card round.
Oh yeah, I think it's gonna be an even matchup, and to me, I think Jayden Daniels has such poise that I I'm taking the Commanders.
Man, I really want to take Washington because I love Daniels. I don't know. I just can't trust him here on the road in his first playoff start. I mean, I don't put it past the Commanders to win this game, but to me, the Bucs are going to find a way to get this done. Packers and Eagles, the 7-2 matchup here.
Give me Eagles. Definitely, especially rooting for the Eagles because of my dear friend Rafael Delavedovi. Give me Philadelphia.
And also, I just realized this is a rematch of Week 1 in Sao Paulo as well.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
Oh, that was a great game. So
don't talk about it. Give me pains to my heart.
Yeah. To me, though, the Packers are a bit banged up. Jordan Love is a bit banged up heading into this game. Now, remember last year, the Packers did pull off an upset in this 7-2 game on the road at Dallas, where also I was getting ready to deal with a snowstorm.
That's true.
The voodoo, is it there? The Eagles, to me, though, are way better than that Cowboys team. I'm taking Philly.
Taking Philly, too. Yeah, I don't see a meltdown like the Cowboys did.
Yeah, we're within 2 minutes left in the Orange Bowl. All right, going over to the AFC. So you've got Vikings, Commanders, and Eagles. So that would put the Commanders at the Lions in the divisional round, and then the Vikings at the Eagles in the divisional round.
I mean, the NFC Championship, only a disaster is going to take the number 1 and number 2. Lions, Eagles.
Yeah, so for me, I would have the Bucks at the Eagles and then the Rams at the Lions. And if we get, we already had Stafford versus Lions last year. But I think the Lions won again. So I would say this. I'd be surprised if it wasn't Eagles, Lions either. Now, AFC. We have the Chargers. This is the 5 seed going to the number 4 seed Houston Texans.
Give me what is it? Sorry, it broke up.
Yeah, the 5 seed Los Angeles Chargers under Jim Harbaugh, of course, obviously won the national championship last year in college football in his first year back in the NFL, back in the playoffs, going to CJ Stroud in Houston, which to me, I know they won the AFC South, but they've been a bit disappointing. I thought they would be a lot better this year than they've shown. But hey, you're in the playoffs. You can turn it on right now. But I think right now the most fresh memory people have, outside of them winning last week against the Titans, was them getting absolutely smacked down on Christmas Day by the Ravens.
Give me Chargers.
I agree. Give me the Chargers as well. And normally I wouldn't take them, but I trust Harbaugh to get this one done. I just think right now the Chargers are a much better football team.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Steelers, Ravens. To me, Ravens are trending up. The Steelers have been trending down. I don't think the Steelers are going to get much offense in this game, and I expect Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry to be at their best here. I think the Ravens win by a comfortable margin, to be honest with you.
Ravens, too. Definitely Ravens.
And then Broncos at Bills. I mean, great story for Bo Nix this year. But I think you're going to see the inexperience in this game. And the Bills, I think, are a team on a mission. I think they take care of business here. Give me Buffalo. And I think I may have lost Gus there. He is frozen. He is frozen like he's Elsa. Frozen like I'm going to be tomorrow. Oh, there you go. Yeah, you froze up for a minute there, Gus.
You're back.
I didn't hear you.
At least to me.
I'm assuming. Who did you take in Broncos Bills? Gus, who'd you take in the Broncos and Bills game? And he throws that again. So I'm taking Bills there. I'll ask him when he's fully back. For me, like in the AFC, would be Chargers at Chiefs and Ravens at Bills. I'm going to take Chiefs over Chargers, and then, man, that Ravens-Bills game, do I need to make a pick right now? I probably would take Ravens to give you Ravens-Chiefs in the AFC. But, man. All right, are you back? Can you hear me?
Nick?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Back.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
We had a connection problem.
Yeah, so I did not hear your pick for Bills Broncos.
It's gonna be close, but give me Buffalo. Buffalo.
Yeah, so as I was saying, we both have Chiefs at Chargers, Ravens at Bills in the AFC divisional round.
I'm rooting so much for Chiefs, Bills. I mean, this is the best rivalry in the AFC.
Yeah, it'd be unreal. Chiefs Ravens too would be an unreal game. Ravens Bills will be an unreal semifinal match. All right, quickly, just some basketball real quick. Our basketball's kind of a mixed bag because, one, they got to dominate a former teammate, Jonas Adu, in Arkansas in the SEC opener. But then they turned around and lost by 30 at Florida. Grant Florida's a top 10 team. But is basketball as good as they've looked against Arkansas, or are as they bad as they looked against Florida?
Neither. I saw people panicking, comparing this loss to this performance to when they lost to South Carolina in football in 2022. Calm down. It's a one road game in SEC play in a midweek game after a SEC opener with a very good Arkansas team. So I not say they're the best team in college basketball, but they are not. It was not a disaster loss. It was just a really tough game on a hostile environment. Definitely, those fans in Gainesville showed up. They want to, kind of make it a difference in the environment. And Rick Barnes is going to turn around and see the issues. So calm the F down.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. They're going to play. They're not going to play that bad again. Now, clearly, the concern I have is if we're that cold in a game in March, how do we find a way to generate offense? Because we didn't find an answer on Tuesday. We're going to have to find an answer in tournament games, or else we're not going to get to where we want to get, and that's to our first Final Four, which this team has the potential to do. But you can't have situations like that. So it's a good learning experience. Hope they learn from it. I expect them to play much better on Saturday at Texas. Also, the Lady Vols, man, they had a series of crushing losses. First, they lost by a point to Oklahoma. They came back from down 20 to almost win. And then tonight, they came back down double digits and lost at the buzzer to LSU. I mean, look, you can look at this two ways. One, they haven't been able to pull off these wins against top 10 teams, but this is the most exciting the Lady Vols have looked in over a decade. And to me, I think Kim Caldwell is going to find a way to get these wins, help her team get these wins, and the Lady Vols are going to get back to the top.
Yeah, I think it's her first season. Kim Caldwell is doing a tremendous job, and the goal is to make to the tournament. And it looks like even though it's going to be in like a lower seed, they're going to make it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they'll probably be a top 5, 6 seed. They have a chance to host potentially. Some quick notes. Charlie Morton to the Orioles. Has pitched for the Braves the last 4 years. Shout out to him as part of the World Series team in 2021. Part of the early part of this podcast, remember episode 3, we got to celebrate the Braves winning a World Series. So still commanded $15 million at the age of 41, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Drew, what are you doing?
Interception.
With 33 seconds. What are you doing? That is unbelievable. He throws an interception with 30 seconds left, and Notre Dame has to go like 10 yards for a game winning field goal. And that wasn't even, man. Holy cow. I can't
Like
believe that.
he should have just, throw outside. He literally, throw the ball in the most predictable route.
Yeah. I, st- I stand I would on my point about Drew Alar. He is no good. But is that going to be upheld? Yeah, I think that's a catch.
Oh
Let's
yeah,
see if it's
he
angled.
caught the ball before his knee touched the ground. Clearly,
Yeah, clearly a catch.
no. I mean, if this is not a catch, then if Notre Dame fans, I mean, it's gonna be even worse than the throwing bottles.
Man, yeah. Well, this one they'd be justified on because man, I wow, I can't believe Drew Alar threw that ball. And he look on his face, he knows he shouldn't have thrown that ball. Um, oh my gosh, wow, yeah. Drew Alar is no good. Do you hear that? He is no good at quarterback. And the call is confirmed. Notre Dame is going to have a chance with 33 seconds. All right, real quick, just want to shout out Charlie Morton. And the last topic I have for America, Jimmy Butler demanding a trade out of Miami. Seems like the run's over there for him. I mean, he's had a really good run at Miami. Yeah, they didn't win a championship, but 2 finals appearances as an underdog. You can't be mad at that if you are a Heat fan.
Yeah, 28 seconds to go.
Yeah, I guess we'll just probably ride out the remainder of regulation here on the
Yeah,
podcast just to see what happens. 28
and
seconds.
just real quick while the game is in timeout. Brazilian sports. I mean, still in the off season. Still, the next week's gonna start all the state championship, but there's some trouble down in Rio de Janeiro for the current Brazilian and South American champion Botafogo. According to some rumors, the players might hold out and delay showing up to preseason because of delayed payments of bonuses for winning those championships that I just mentioned. So be
Oh,
kind
wow.
of be a holdout, a collective holdout.
That is crazy.
Yeah,
I mean, they win you that championship, and they're just going to run up the middle with Riley Leonard here. I don't really blame them.
and it's funny how the American owner John Texter has been accused from agents to teams of not paying the fees, the transfer fee, commission fees that he's supposed to. So John Texter's been been called out as somebody who's not paying the money that he's supposed to. So that's the kind of big topic of Brazilian sports. Also, I think I mentioned it. Oscar, former Chelsea, going to Sao Paulo. Also, Rodrigo Gajo, the one of the main players from Corinthians last season, got involved in a car accident. He was driving and he hit another person that ended up passing away, and the investigation is still ongoing. According to Argentinian media, he wasn't, driving under the influence, but definitely that can mess up someone's head, and definitely can affect a player that was detrimental to Corinthians' rebuild last season. So that's pretty much it for Brazilian sports. So let's see what's happened
Oh, what
down.
a play. Good pass for Notre Dame.
Yeah, it looks like Notre Dame. uh, They're gonna, yeah, they they're gonna try maybe one more and then go for a field goal.
Yeah, well, I think what you're going to see here, and so they spiked it with 14 seconds. What you're going to see now is you're going to talk to the kicker, talk to the coach, if decide which hash does Mitch Jeter want. Does he want it in the middle of the field? Do you want to go to the left hash, right hash? It's where I really want Jason because he obviously he's a special teams guy. So like, of course, he would tell you all the same things. But right now, you're going to put the ball where Mitch Jeter can win the game. So, and CFP history so far, kickers are 0-4 on go-ahead field goals in the fourth quarter. Leonard's going to go to the middle of the field. If I'm Penn State, I take timeouts. Give yourself a chance. Yeah, Penn State's going to take a timeout. I think. Yeah, this has to be a Penn State timeout. They have 2 timeouts remaining. And now, if you're Notre Dame, how do you handle this? You just do a quarterback sneak. That was Penn State's second timeout. 10 seconds remain in the fourth quarter for us. 14 seconds. So if you run off like 4 seconds here, that's 10 seconds that you're trying to kick. And then it maybe is like 3 seconds left. So like Penn State maybe gets like laterals on the kick return or a Hail Mary maybe. But that's like Penn State's only hope if this kick goes through. Basically, Penn State's only hope is that this kick is missed and we go to overtime. So for Notre Dame right now, they're at the 25-yard line of Penn State. 14 seconds remaining, 3rd and 10. And they're just going to do a sneak. So I imagine Penn State will take another timeout. And now it's time. So that's Penn State's last timeout. So they can't ice the kicker. So, yeah, Mitch Jeter is going to run out on the field here with 12 seconds remaining in the Orange Bowl down in Miami. And what has been a legendary game between 2 blue bloods of the sport.
This game is going to be remembered forever.
Absolutely. And another classic game that we have gotten to watch together here on the Two Countries, Two Americas All Sports podcast. Wow, 12 seconds. Mitch Jeter, he was at Duke originally. 3 of 4 on the year on go-ahead field goals.
Oh, that's true. He got that attempt against Northern Illinois block, so he could be like a redemption story.
Absolutely. The Penn State fans in their wideout trying to make some noise. Mitch Jeter for the win for Notre Dame. Snap, set, kick. Good. Right down the middle. And Notre Dame is 7 seconds away from the national championship. The Fighting Irish, after years of turmoil, are 7 seconds.
What a redemption story. I mean, who would have thought the kicker that missed a field goal on one of the biggest upsets in college football history now gets to be redeemed in one of the biggest games in Notre Dame's, at least in the 21st century?
Yeah, I mean, just an unbelievable time. And the last time Notre Dame was in the national title was 2012, and they got absolutely smoked by Alabama. You would have to imagine they will be an underdog to either Ohio State or Texas. James Franklin knows that was devastating. For James Franklin, assuming that there isn't a miracle here, this is a devastating loss for James Franklin. Because like I said earlier, all you did was beat SMU and Boise State and then lost to Notre Dame. I don't think that's going to impress Penn State fans very much. I'm just going to be completely honest.
Yeah, and look at Notre Dame. You know, okay, beating Indiana, the 3rd best team. I mean, Notre Dame beat the 3rd, the 2nd best teams at Big 12, and the best team in the SEC.
Yeah,
and
Notre Dame they've proven me wrong. That's for sure. I said they didn't belong in this level, that they shouldn't have given this opportunity until they joined a conference. But they're joining us. They're proving me wrong for sure. as we
And
have to kick off.
go ahead. Sorry.
And that's going to be a touchback. 8 seconds. What magic does Penn State have now? If you're Notre Dame, you keep everything in front of you. If they throw a Hail Mary, you knock it down.
And they have still one timeout.
Yeah. So maybe you throw it like maybe a 10-yard out route or something.
Yeah.
Throw it 10, 15 yards, get down, call timeout. Maybe if you can get up to about the 35, 40, I don't know how far Alar can throw it. I don't think he has the strongest arm. You've got 2 plays at most here. You're Penn State. Back to throw. Alar looking to the left and throws it out of bounds. There wasn't any receiver there. So 2nd and 10. It comes down to this play. Penn State. This would be one of the most miraculous plays in the history of college football. They need a score. What do they have there? I mean, it's too far for a Hail Mary. They're going to have to do a hook and lateral. Let's see how many hook and laterals we can get. Back to throw. Alar throws to Warren. They're going to throw it to number 6. I believe that's Wallace. They're going to throw it back to Drew Alar. He's going to throw it across the field, and he throws it out of bounds. And that's the game. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish are going to the national championship. And a program-defining win for the Fighting Irish. A program-devastating loss for Penn State. Wow.
Yeah, especially the way they couldn't keep the ball at the end, and that interception definitely is going to be remembered. Congratulations. And I was going to make a point, and I definitely can. Do you think, to end this podcast episode, another historical one, the first one of the year, do you think this win and this run of Penn State is going to make them even more considering not joining a conference? Because they're like, okay, we didn't join a conference. We don't have automatic bids. We don't care. We have a home game in the playoffs, and then we can make it.
Yeah, I mean, plus if you get rid of the whole auto buy thing and allow Notre Dame to get a top 4 seed, yeah, there is no reason at that point. And which is annoying to me because I think that's not fair to every other team. But it is what it is on that front. And, of course, independence has always been a part of college football. And, in an era where we're getting rid of college football tradition, maybe this is one place where maybe we shouldn't lose it.
Yeah. And congratulations to the Fighting Irish. Totally deserve to be in the national championship. But shout out Marcus Freeman. I mean, talking of a program that felt like they hit their plateau, they peaked under Brian Kelly, and they even surpassed.
Yeah, and I'll be curious to see what they can do against what I think is Ohio State. We'll see if Texas can change that narrative. But remember, Notre Dame last year, they took Ohio State to the absolute limit and were beaten on the final play. I think that would be what's crazy to me, because I guess I still have this perception in my mind that Notre Dame does not have that level of talent, but they actually do. And that's just something as an SEC guy that is going to be hard for me to wrap my mind around.
I guess now we're kind of stumbling, getting late. So that's it for tonight.
Yeah, this episode, 2 Countries, 2 Americas, All Sports, the Orange Bowl edition. As Notre Dame is in the national championship, we'll find out tomorrow who joins them. As I will be parading around in the snow. You enjoy your nice tropical weather, Gus. I will have warm weather again eventually. But for Gus Tomazeli and sunny Americana, I am Nick Hill from a soon-to-be snowy Chattanooga. This is 2 Countries, 2 Americas, All Sports, the only sports broadcast talking about both Brazilian and American sports.